Today is actually the first day of Mental Health Awareness Month. It is May 1st, all through the month. And this topic is very timely right now, I feel, mainly because we're going through so much as a country with this pandemic that's happening right now, and mental health is something that especially Bahamians don't really like to talk about. We usually like to suppress our feelings, our thoughts. We usually like to keep things to ourselves. So I wanted to use this opportunity for us to talk about and dive into what we're doing to cope during this pandemic. We haven't really discussed it. We've done a lot of things on live, but I thought it was really important to have this conversation to really dissect what this means for us. For a lot of people, this is a new normal, not being able to go to work, being on lockdown, having our kids working, doing schoolwork from home. Like, it's challenging. And then I've had conversations with some friends that have talked about losing loved ones during this pandemic and not being able to have a proper funeral, a proper burial. And then there are some people that are actually testing positive for the coronavirus, and they're not having their loved ones around them in the hospital. So it's a really hard time. It's a really challenging time. A lot of people are losing jobs. Then they're not knowing where the next dollar is coming from. A lot of people are struggling with depression. A lot of people are living alone, feeling alone, and it's been a challenge for some of us to cope. Like, I'll be honest, I've been on the struggle bus once or twice, not being able to go through my regular routine on a daily basis, missing my friends and my loved ones abroad. I've been doing things to try to cope, but I have reached out to a dear friend of mine, Dr. Judith Joseph, who is actually the contributing psychiatrist to the Dr. Oz show on ABC. And she has a wealth of knowledge that she can actually share with us. So I'm going to see if I can find Judith right now so that we can get her on to discuss this very poignant topic, because it's something that it's triggering. It's really triggering. Like, right now we start to talk about as I continue to look for Judith. I can't find her right now, but there we go. Hey Judith, what's up?
How are you?
I'm good. Let me adjust my volume.
Speaking with a patient. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Okay.
Nice to see you.
So, it's so good to see you. It's been forever.
Yes.
And I know that you're very, very busy, so I was giving everybody a little introduction on who you are and what you do, but just feel free to dive in and correct me where I'm wrong. I'm saying hi to everyone. Guys, I'm going to say all my highs now, because the minute we get into diving into some of these topics, I know it's going to be hard for us to really stop. But if you have questions that we can answer, feel free to share them. I'll do my best to pin them, so if I don't get to answer them, we'll try to come back to them if time permits. But like I was telling everybody, we are officially in Mental Health Awareness Month. And this is an opportunity for us to really talk about some of the things that we don't get a chance to talk about. Mental health being a stigma that we don't really, especially as Bahamians, as Caribbean people. Judith is from Trinidad, everyone. So we share the Caribbean bond. Hey Stevie, in common. And I can speak for Bahamians when I say that I know Bahamians don't like to talk about mental health. It's a thing from our parents, our grandparents. They'll say pray about it, or they'll say it'll work itself out, but they never really address some of the concerns. And with everything that's happening this month and the months that brought in 2020, it's just been really hard to discuss some of the things that might be in our minds, right? So I'm going to give you the floor just to give a little introduction before we get into the meat of the matter.
Yeah,
so go ahead.
Well, so I'm a psychiatrist which means that I can do therapy and give medications. And I specialize in children, adolescents, adults, geriatric populations. Pretty much I can treat the family. And in some cases I do. I've treated multiple generations in one family, which is really interesting because you get to see that, just like hypertension, high blood pressure, diabetes, things do run in families, and there are biological reasons, for some of these conditions. So people forget the mind is a part of the body, So we have to treat the entire body, including your mind, especially now. I do a lot of consulting for television. You may have seen me on several shows. I teach at Columbia and at NYU, and I love what I do, especially because I'm a part of a community that, traditionally does not seek mental health care. So,
yeah,
I'm excited for that.
So Judith is our resident expert, you guys. I'm definitely not an expert. The only thing I can give you is advice from my experience and exposure and common sense. But Judith is here to make sure that she steers me on the right path with some of the things I'm saying. But some of the questions that we're going to be bringing up, we're not going to give quote unquote formal medical advice. We just want to talk about how we just some best practices and ways on coping, and make some suggestions on how you can deal with some of these things. But I think we're going to steer away from directly answering them to avoid any issues. I don't want nobody coming for us saying, "Oh, but you told me to do this or you told me to do that." So we kill that. That's our disclaimer right away. So I'm gonna just jump straight into the questions. Like I said earlier, I was really surprised. Honestly, I was so taken aback that some people actually responded with some really personal questions. So obviously, as we progress into this new era, people are opening up a little bit more and feeling comfortable with talking about their issues. So that's a good sign. We've come a long way. So having said that, I'll jump into the first question. The first question was, I recently lost a parent during this pandemic, and it hasn't really hit me yet. The only emotion I feel right now is guilt about not feeling any other emotion. Is this normal? And what can I do to prevent a whirlwind of emotions crashing down on me out of the blue?
And the word normal, I think, doesn't apply anymore. How you feel is how you feel. Your feelings are one of the things that people can't take from you, right? And in this situation, people are really being robbed of these traditions and these ceremonies to celebrate people's lives. And there's a lot of grief. And one of the common reactions to grief is shock and disbelief. And in this case, it's even harder, because you don't get to see the body. You don't get to say your goodbyes. There's no ceremony. So how this person is feeling is what I've heard every day in my practice. And I've heard it from children and adults who've lost someone. I feel like it's not really happening. A, because this situation is just surreal. And B, it doesn't feel real when someone dies and you don't get to see them and you don't get to do these rituals. And so I think that it's really important, and we'll talk about technology in a little bit, but it's important to, as best as you can, gather on a platform to at least grieve together, knowing that at a later point you'll have that opportunity to do it in a more traditional way. I'm also hearing that, oh my gosh, everyone's saying like Zoom, FaceTime is the answer for everything. It's not. There's like real burnout when it comes to technology. So, make that known that, okay, this is what we're doing for now. And later on down the line, you'll get, the real ceremony, the real ritual, the experience, and honoring this person the way that you want it to.
That's important. That's important. You made a very valid point that a lot of people are getting burned out from Zoom and FaceTime and Skype and Teams and all these virtual existences. And it's really hard to emotionally connect doing this. I mean, our options are very slim and limited, but finding ways to cope and planning for future gatherings so that you can actually feel that human emotion in the future, that's really good advice. I hope she's listening and watching and got something from it. I want to say though that I feel like I only he feels it, knows it. I haven't lost anyone, thankfully, to this pandemic so far. Knock on wood. But I know that to say that the only feeling that you have is guilt to not have any other feeling. I mean, I feel like everybody's different. Like you said, the way we grieve and the way we mourn, it really, it's a personal thing.
Well,
And
it's guilt because, you feel like you can't be there. You weren't able to be by that bedside.
yeah,
What could you have done differently? And there's something called survivor's guilt. Why did I not get ill and that other person got ill, And
yeah,
then when you're sitting there sad, you're like, well, I should be grateful because I'm alive. Well, no, this situation is very painful for everyone. So I think guilt is a natural feeling and you have to go through it and grieve. People want to just have positive feelings. These negative feelings are just as important.
I agree. So good to know. Thanks for that. So our second question is, I'm in a relationship with my significant other, and before the coronavirus, we were talking about a divorce. We have no children, but we have assets together. I'm stuck in the house with him and I'm struggling with my emotions. How can I manage my feelings with him and avoid creating more negative energy in the house? This is a tough one.
That is tough. I don't know this person's situation. I don't know if there was any abuse, but we do know that during this pandemic, some people are thriving in their relationships and other people are really suffering, and you're seeing an increase in domestic violence. And from what we know about previous pandemics, this is a pattern, this happens. And this is something that a lot of people aren't talking about. You've seen all these posts of people like living their best lives together. It's not like that for a lot of people. And this situation sounds, even more intense, right? Because you're pretty much imprisoned with this person. There are hotlines, there are resources where you can call if you feel like you're having an abusive experience and you feel alone. And the option of calling the police or leaving the house is just not there, as readily as it was in the past because, the police are dealing with other problems. What I would say is try your best to set limits. Just because as a New Yorker, all of our apartments are pretty small relative to everywhere else. So if we can do it, you can. See if you can come up with a rule that, okay, during this time of the day, I'm going to use this room and that room. And, it's a negotiation and it's something that I think is very, very unique to the situation, but communication is key and keeping those boundaries in place and also having your own support. With couples that I treat, I suggest that, rather than telling everyone your business, pick that one or two people, someone you can help and someone who can help you, and keep it to that, limited amount of people.
Find your person.
Go to that support, go to that person for support. But that one is a tough one. I feel like this is someone who probably would benefit from therapy, right?
Yeah, I know. When I saw the question, I was like, oh, I wanted to delete immediately because I felt like it was sensitive information. But I said, you know what? This is the perfect platform to express in anonymity, because some people, they struggle with even talking to people that they do know about this sort of stuff. So I welcomed it with the gauge of knowing that this had to have been done. It was brave. It was hard, and she wanted it to be done anonymously, and I can respect and appreciate that, because like you said, it's really hard to decipher between making and breaking a relationship during this time. Like, everybody does not have it really well living in the house. So before this pandemic even started, a lot of people were struggling in their relationships, and we have to decide for ourselves and for our relationship if this is the best position for us to be in. And once you decide that, I mean, you gotta live with it.
Yeah. Well, the nice thing about teletherapy is that you don't have to go to a waiting room. You don't have to worry about, will so-and-so recognize me coming in, right? Yeah. So this may be a perfect opportunity for this person to start teletherapy, because, it sounds like they need as much support as possible.
Yeah. I'm reading some of the comments as we go. Someone said, sadness is just as important of an emotion as happiness. And I want to say I do agree with that. I think she was speaking on our first question with the person who's not feeling her emotions on the passing of her loved one. I do think it's really important to own every emotion, because we're not complete without owning every emotion. I think that we lose a little bit of ourselves when we bottle up some of the emotions. Now, everything in moderation. I personally feel, because you could go from manic to depressive like in an instant if you're not in control of how you're handling your emotions during this time. I mean, I've seen it with some people. Like, some people literally 20 hours a day, like they just cannot keep still. They're constantly on social media, like just doing whatever they can to keep themselves busy, to not deal with the actual emotion of, this is not my normal anymore. So,
well, what I've heard from my patients is like, I don't want to go to this Zoom party because I don't feel happy. And that's okay. Like, say, I'm going to skip out on this one because they feel this pressure to perform. And, while I think it's important to be connected and so forth, I agree with that. You have to really try and reflect and understand your feelings and know what works for you. And maybe tomorrow will be a better day. And if today is not one of those days, that's okay. You don't have to perform. Right?
I agree with that. It's okay to not be okay sometimes. I think we have to let that settle into our system. So another question I got was, I'm a working single mother adjusting to my new life working from home. My kids are enrolled in virtual learning, but I can't seem to adjust and keep organized. Can you offer some tips for me on balancing my life right now?
This is a hard one because parents are being asked to be a teacher, a parent, right? And to work with an employee. Who can do that? I don't know anyone who can do all three. And so people are thinking, when they went into the quarantine, they're like, I'm going to get so much done. I'm going to get this done. It's going to be great. And now, and there are not enough hours in a day. And so, what I tell families is, and I'm sure you've heard this, routine. Your child woke up at a certain time of the day, got dressed, got ready for school. Try your best to stick to that routine. And if you've already, let go of that routine, just slowly inch back to it. Because children need safety, they need structure, and they need information. And so if you can provide that visually, that's best. Because a lot of younger kids need to see something. They need to see something that's colorful. They need to know exactly what's happening. And then that somehow organizes them. The other thing, again, I mentioned in Manhattan, small apartments, right? So I've seen some really creative things where the parent will use a sheet to create like a makeshift cubicle, and they'll say, when this sheet is up, you got to stay out there. That means, mommy or daddy, we're in a call. And if you're able to not cross this sheet for X amount of, minutes, I'm going to give you a good behavior bead, and you can cash it in at the end of the week and we can do something together. So I've seen really creative things to help organize families. I've seen some kids on virtual lessons with another child from their class. And the parent of the other child will be like the supervisor, will be the teacher's aide. So they'll be like, you can do your call, I'll watch the kids. So people are it's bringing these communities together because it's very difficult to be in a small space and have all these roles. But I will say that the structure and keeping the schedule really helps.
I agree. Like, I felt for this mom because I actually have help, but I can tell you, like, I got a 16-year-old and an 11-year-old, and when it comes to math, I'm like, no. So I can only imagine how she's struggling, with this new normal, especially if you've never had to teach in that way. That is a challenge, and people don't understand. Like, they always say, hats off to teachers and whatever. And I'm like, but they went to school to learn how to teach my kid. I didn't. So me as a parent, like, I'm teaching my kids morals and standards and values, but teaching them math and English and literature and Spanish and physics and chemistry. And I'm like, okay, whoa. Yeah. And I have my day job. One thing I would suggest to that single mom is to also find a support group. Find other moms who are probably challenged or faced with the same sort of issues, and see who might be stronger in a subject than you might be, so that maybe you could do Zoom meetings with a particular subject to catch up. Because I can tell you, like, when it's time to do algebra with my son, I'm like, no. I can't. So someone said my carnival costume in the back.
I know. I saw that.
I'm so sorry, guys. I know I miss carnival too. Our carnival would have been this weekend. It would have been this weekend. So we're going through withdrawals right now. I'm sorry. I'm gonna try to block it out. But this is what I would have been wearing.
Oh, that's beautiful.
If we had Bahamas Carnival.
Everyone notices everything in the background now that we're all.
I know. Pay attention to the plan. Listen to the conversation. He's like, I'm triggered. I'm so sorry. I know. We all, like, every Bahamian right now and Caymanian, because our carnivals are the same weekend. We're like, we're about having the itches because we're thinking this weekend we're supposed to be partying, and things happen. It's all about how we're coping, you know. I'm sorry for exposing you guys with my carnival costume. I thought it would have been a nice prop. Anyways, I'm gonna get back into the other question. For those just joining us, we're just talking about some of the questions that were sent to me via DM about coping mechanisms during this coronavirus time. And we segued because we're Caribbean girls and we want to talk carnival, but we're back. We're focused. This next question, this was really a tough one. When I read it, I literally, my jaw dropped. This person said, I'm very depressed because of this pandemic. I'm not suicidal, but I feel very withdrawn and I find myself drinking to cope and calm myself down. The feeling of being stuck is overwhelming. I live alone and my parents have NCDs, which are non-communicable diseases, and are high risk, so I don't want to be around them. I recently broke up with my boyfriend and I find myself wanting to reach back out to him. I feel stuck and I really need some advice on how to get out of this funk.
So, this sounds, again, I'm not directly answering these people because I don't treat them, but I am seeing a lot of depression. We know from previous pandemics, right, like H1N1 and other, really serious pandemics, that people do experience acute stress reactions. They have problems with sleep, they are irritable, they become withdrawn and very anxious and worry about things like this. So how she's feeling, and this brave person, how this person feels is how a lot of people are feeling right now. And they're not necessarily talking about it because who are you going to talk to, right? What I will say is there are natural things that you can do that are within your power, right? Getting up a bit earlier, getting that natural sunlight on your face, even if it's a cloudy day and your blinds are up, you're still getting sunlight. And that sunlight helps your body to block melatonin, which is a hormone that naturally exists in our bodies that helps to regulate your sleep cycle, right? Eating foods that are healthy, where you don't feel bloated and heavy, also they're boosters for your mood. Walnuts, almonds, bananas, fatty fish like salmon and cod. These are things you can do naturally to help yourself feel better, to have more natural energy, to have a better sleep cycle. And again, just like I mentioned how kids need structure to feel safe, adults need it too. They need structure. And limit that negative information. You want to be up to date on the news. You want to hear what's happening, but at the same time, it's scary. It's overwhelming. So try your best to limit it, because then you're worrying about things that are not within your control, and you're losing focus on the things that are within your control, like getting up earlier, getting sunlight, getting exercise, eating right. These things, and studies show that these behaviors, the more you do them, the more you feel better about yourself and competent and confident, and your points of joy increase. So that helps you to beat that depression. And I know that we talked about it's important to validate your feelings, your fears, and so forth, but sometimes your fears do take control of you. So start to put your fears on a jury stand, in a courtroom, and really cross-examine these fears. How likely is it that this is going to happen? And then you're really challenging these automatic negative thoughts that can really bog you down.
Yeah.
And as you're challenging these thoughts, every night list 3 things that you're grateful for. It should be something new every night.
I like
even
that.
if it's little, like I'm grateful for that, like really, nice piece of, whatever you ate today, right? Like that was so nice and like refreshing and whatever. Even if it's small, it should be something different every day, because there's a whole field of positive psychology. When you do focus on some positive things, it does naturally start to boost your motivation, your energy, and your outlook. So there are things that you can do on your own, that can help you and improve your quality of life.
I like that. I didn't even think about the list of writing down some small things that you're grateful for. I think that is a good booster. I'm actually going to try that myself. And I also say it's important to disconnect too. Like we get so caught up, like because we're moving into this virtual world, we find that we feel like we're missing out when we're not engaging on social media or being online or connecting in some sort of social or digital way. And I think it's so important to put your phone down, turn the television off, mindfulness, meditation, having just that opportunity to really dissect your thoughts, because most of the time we're compounding our thoughts. We're adding and piling all these things that we can't control on top of each other. And then instead of dealing with them in positive ways, I find that we compartmentalize them and go do something that's easy. And then once we're done with that easy thing, we still got to deal with the big elephant in the room. Yeah. So for me, like what I've done, I put my phone on vibrate at a certain time in the night. Because I know I'm very fancy. I'm going to grab it and start surfing if I feel bored. So instead of having my phone probably right there on the nightstand, I might put it in my purse, far away from me, and I ain't going to get up out of bed to go get not with her. So I was like, okay, that's that. Even though I'm a person that has like 3 phones, so I have to keep all of them away from me, just to make sure that I stay disconnected. Because sometimes too, when we see other people living their best life or experiencing certain things, and we feel like, okay, what's missing over here? And I find myself like, some people might consider what you think is sharing a good experience, a positive experience, is bragging, and that creates an environment for them to feel bad about what they're doing or how they're coping. So mindfulness, I think, is also a good tool to practice our surroundings as well. That's my take on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you're practicing mindfulness and you are being present and you're outside, away from digital media, you're engaging the 5 senses sometimes, right? Like if you're out and you have something with you that something that you're eating or drinking, try your best to be present in whatever you're doing. So if this person sounds pretty withdrawn, make a little effort to stimulate all your senses, right? Even if it's like rubbing a nice cream that you like and just watching it like flow over your fingers and watching it moisturize. Something as small as that goes a long way, because you're feeling it, you're smelling it, you're seeing it, right? If you're out for a walk, try to be present. Start to notice things. I noticed this flower, I noticed this tree, I'm feeling this cool breeze on my face, I'm feeling this warm sun, I'm listening to this bird sing. These are all things that you are trying to stay present in the moment, stimulating these senses that are really not getting the stimulation because we're staying indoors.
Yeah, you're right. I hope she got some really good tidbits with what you just shared, because I think it's really important, everything that you just shared, and it can be really helpful to anyone that's struggling. This next question was very hard for me. I read this question maybe about 4 or 5 times to myself, because I feel like this person is caught between a rock and a hard place. I obviously feel like there's some underlying issues here, but I'm going to read the question and just tell me what you think about it. The person says to me, I've been self-isolating in my room for about 4 days, and I'm afraid to tell anyone who lives with me that I've tested positive for the coronavirus. I fear that they might ask me to leave the house. How do you suggest I break the news to them? I'm finding it hard to cope with it myself. I have no symptoms, and I've been keeping away from my family, but I don't want them to put me out of the house because I have nowhere to go.
That is a tough one. From what we know about former pandemic, stigma is a really big thing. And how this person is feeling, they should know that they're not alone. There are a lot of people who haven't told their friends, their family, that they're positive for this same reason. And it actually leads to behaviors where human beings start to become reckless, and they just stop following rules like social distancing and so forth. So, and I think that it's really important for leaders to really decrease the stigma and to show people that they can get treatment confidentially. In this case, I would advise this person, if they were in my practice, not this particular person, to talk to their doctor about it. What can I tell? What are my obligations for reporting? Because here in New York, we get different notices daily about how to report, what to do. The doctors in this case are the ones who are the most up to date and that could help this person out, because you should not be alone in this situation. Mm-hmm. This is a medical question, and if you were having surgery, you wouldn't try and figure it out on your own by Googling it, right? He or she really needs support from their primary provider. And a lot of times, I just gave a talk to Columbia Nursing and Alumni Association at Columbia. I see they joined. That these doctors are now being asked, these nurses are now being asked to be therapists. So they're starting to get this crash course in managing corona anxiety. And some of them, I tell you, I call them for help. What should I tell my patient who has COVID? So this person should not be alone in this. This is a medical question, and it's serious. And here in New York, they've actually started to open up. Some people have started opening up their Airbnbs. Some hotels have started to open up to really help people who are in this situation. So if this person reaches out to a medical professional, they may have access to those resources where, you don't have to hide it from your family. You can go and live at this place. But if you're alone and you're not talking about it, you're not going to get help.
Yeah.
And I feel sorry for this person.
I do as well. I wanted to express my thoughts in that moment, but I didn't think it would be fair to give my personal views on such a sensitive topic. But one thing I wanted to say, and I don't know if I'll say he or she is listening, because I don't want to really give their identity away. One thing I did say to that person was, I feel like it's important to express the truth, to be honest about the situation. And as hard as it might seem, I feel as though it's not wise to create compounding situations, because I don't know the person's family, but if you're already exposing people, you're jeopardizing not only your health and safety, but theirs as well. And if they were to find this out because you didn't tell them, or somebody else contracts it, then you've also created a trust issue, which will last way longer than the pandemic. And if it were me, I would find my plan B, plan C, plan D. I would talk it all through myself, gather all my thoughts, worst case scenario, best case scenario, because you only really got two options here. Either you tell them or you don't. Either you stay or you go. And you have to consider all these thoughts, how they affect you, how they affect your family. Do the research as to whether or not there are facilities here in the Bahamas that may be able to take you in. Because like they said, they weren't experiencing any symptoms, so they were asked to self-isolate, which I thought was kind of strange. But
well, no, and that's the thing. I think this person feels that they only have two choices, when that's not the case at all. The primary care doctor may be able to educate the entire family and say, actually, these are the choices you have.
Exactly.
And they don't have to be alone in this. There are several families that I treat where the doctor's like, have this person just stay in this room and just wipe things. This shouldn't be on this person to make this decision. The doctor can really help them out and educate the family to help to decrease the stigma, decrease the fear, and maybe even test the family members, you know? So I don't think this person should be alone. No, this is a medical issue. Don't solve it on your own. No more Dr. Google. Go to your doctor.
I agree. I totally agree. And I don't know, again, I don't know the backstory on this. I don't know if he or she went and got tested and then they gave the results and then they said, here are the places you can stay, or they just say, go home and self-isolate. I really don't know. But you're right. There is so many ways that we can get help if we just ask the right questions. But I would say at the end of the day, don't put anyone else in harm's way. You also have a responsibility to protect the people that you love. And so if you don't feel comfortable enough in telling them, then you got to do right by the situation and find out what's the best course of action with a professional. I definitely agree.
And maybe somebody else in that house gave it to them.
That's a whole other topic. I don't want to put thoughts in their head. Never know. I don't know. Like one of the followers says, they've probably been put out before. Again, that could be something too. They're afraid to be out on the streets or alone. I really didn't want to dive into their personal issues, but I just read the question, and then brought it here. So I hope we were able to help that person. I did have another one that was also a difficult question as well. I want to say, before I even ask this last question, I feel like I want to thank everybody who trusted me with this information. I know it was really hard to share personal things about yourself to have them discussed, but like I said earlier, I think it shows how much progress we're making in sharing about mental health awareness, mental illness, depression, and coping. It's so important that we continue to have the conversation, because as long as we have the conversation, we'll be one step closer to helping ourselves and helping other people. So I want to thank everyone that reached out to me with these questions. This other question that I got says, I work for the hotels here. As you are aware, we're not working right now. The hotels are closed here in the Bahamas. My husband's job has put him on half pay, and our bills are mounting. My mental stability is wavering, and any little change in his or my tone starts an argument. I could see our family crumbling at any moment. I need to change my perspective, or I'm afraid I will leave him and move in with my parents. How can we change the dynamic of our household? I know a lot of people that's struggling with this. I've been on the struggle bus with this myself too. I had to lock myself in a room a couple of times.
Well, I think, again, I don't know this person, but economic uncertainty is a driving force for depression and anxiety right now. Mm-hmm. And this person, they know they're not alone. There are entire industries that are crumbling. And, I just gave a talk to administrators, and there are things that leaders can do to help the people that work for them. A, transparency, right? Mm-hmm. B, having task force to manage stress. C, having surveys that they put out, as a barometer for where their staff feel in terms of their depression, anxiety, and so forth, their concerns. And I think that, unfortunately, some industries and some companies are doing it better than others. And, here, there are support programs and economic and finance programs that help small businesses and so forth, and large businesses as well. I don't know what it's like there. I don't know what the support is like for, hotels and so forth. But I think that in this person's case, it may be helpful to reach out to someone at their job, and let them know what's happening. How can we be supported? What's going to happen to our futures? What do we have available for us? What are my benefits? And I think that people are afraid to ask that because, they don't want other people to know that they're worrying, there's shame. And so,
mm-hmm.
But you've worked for those benefits, you've worked for those resources. And a lot of times we don't utilize it until it's too late, or we're really desperate. Start reaching out now. And, I think that for leaders in the field, start having these conversations. I think, the more sensitive and savvy industries are doing it, and they're putting it out there. We are all suffering. This hurts us all. Let's talk about it. How can we help? And I think that this person may benefit from reaching out to their employer. Now, in terms of the family crumbling, that's another thing. Like, people don't want to talk about your finances because they're embarrassed, and everyone's shame comes from a different place. There's got to be, or I hope there's someone that this person can talk to where they don't feel ashamed. They don't have to hide, their concerns about their bills. Reach out to the people that are supporting you. And if things are that unstable, maybe there's abuse there. You never know. Like I said, domestic violence is on the rise right now.
Yeah.
So that was a packed one. It's hard. I haven't treated that person, but I will tell you what I'm seeing industry-wide in terms of management and so forth. And I hope that this person's company has resources for them.
Well, for me, I think when I looked at that, I broke it down into several parts as well. And I worked in the hotel industry before I moved into healthcare marketing. I worked in hotels for 15 years, and I can tell you, with tourism being our #1 industry in the Bahamas, losing that as also the #1 employer in the Bahamas, that has hit a lot of homes in so many ways. In the hospitality industry is a lot of people's bread and butter. You don't work, you don't get paid. Some people are fortunate enough to belong to unions, so they're covered with some benefits. And then some people are either contractual workers, part-time workers, or they just don't have the benefit. So they're depending on whatever they've either saved or could come across. So I can only imagine how hard it must be to not have flowing income, coming into the house, and then to add insult to injury, your husband's on half pay. So I don't know what work he did, but I think that it's so important to be able to have a conversation together. What are we going to do moving forward? We've hit a roadblock. We can't pretend that it does not exist. We're struggling financially. Let's have a conversation on what that means. I can tell you, sometimes I would write a list. Anytime something like this were to happen, let's say, God forbid, if this were to happen to me, but if I were to be put in a situation, I'm one of those OCD people. I automatically start writing options down, like process of elimination. I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, I can do that. People know me, they know I'll sell salty and chicken out my back truck. I'll get creative. But I think that there's some really important steps that we can kind of come to an agreement on how we deal with finances. If you're living in a home where, let's say, in the Bahamas, everybody knows BPL, which is our electrical company, that spends so much money on just paying the electricity. If there's a part of the house that you don't frequent to throughout the day, turn the breaker off in that house, save some money there. If you buy a loaf of bread, small things, you buy a loaf of bread, and you won't eat all that, buy a half a loaf of bread. If you buy MacArthur's milk, change it to a different brand that's cheaper. Find ways to cut down on the cost, because we don't know how long this is going to last. If your husband's on half pay and he's a breadwinner and he is really fitting the bill for a lot of things, you have to compromise on how you're spending. Even though we're on lockdowns here in the Bahamas on the weekends, and then we have curfews throughout the week, things are slowly starting to open up. So you don't need to go out and buy food to have it delivered to you so that you can experience it. Buy enough food that you can cook, meal prep. There are some effective ways that you can try as a family to save on the money. And I'm saying that as a general household dynamic, not anyone who's struggling with substance abuse or domestic abuse or anything like that. I'm just saying, generally and naturally speaking, you can find ways that you can be able to save money, and think of maybe creative ways that you can invest or pool that money and be resourceful with it. Now, in terms of the arguing, I can tell you, this is a big problem. You say something halfway wrong to me, I'm ready to snap. So if I'm confined in a tight space with you 7 days a week, and I have to sleep in the same bed with you, we're going to be in the bathroom at the same time, you want to be in the kitchen with me, you want to watch TV with me, I'm going to get tired of you. And so I know tone can be misinterpreted a lot, because the reality is we spend most of our days outside, in the outside world, where we're working with other people. We're exposed to so many other characters and personalities. And here it is now, the people we chose to spend our lives with, they ain't going nowhere.
Yeah.
So it's a rude awakening for a lot of people to say that this is our lives. And
I mean, and also this person sounds like they're waiting for things to get better. I mean,
yeah,
maybe some people only see an accountant, a financial advisor once a year. Maybe it's time to reach out to that person, not just for taxes, right? Like, start planning for the long haul. They may have information. I can tell you, they definitely have information that you don't have if you're not in finance, for how to plan for the future using your current assets and try and work it out. You know, why are you figuring this out alone? It sounds like this person is in serious financial trouble, and there are some times that you do need to ask for professional help, right?
Yeah. Reach out to the banks and everybody and see. I see one of my followers is saying, so the suggestion is to reach out to people that support you. I'm not sure what that question, what he's trying to say, but he asked also, does Doc know what salty is? As a Bahamian term, salty, meaning bitter. Like,
yes, I do. I treat teenagers.
Hi Terry, hi Valentine. I see some more people are popping up into the chat. Hey guys. But there's so many things that people, I know, people, especially couples that are living together, are trying to understand personal space and me time. And some people, they just want to be upon you. You know, I'm a person that likes to have a good balance. There's some times when I'm going to want you in my face. Let's sit down, let's talk, let's engage. And then there are other times where I just want peace and quiet. So one of the things I've done, and I've been doing this way before the pandemic, I'd wake up early in the morning before anybody else gets up. Like, I'm not a morning person at all. But if I know that that's the only time where I can actually hear my own thoughts and just have a me moment, then I do it. And at the end of the night, I'm definitely a night person. I've just started a fit challenge, so I'm off alcohol for 21 days. Pray for me. But what I would do is when everybody else goes to bed and the house is really quiet and the breeze is blowing outside, I'd open the window, have a nightcap, and listen to some soft music, or just listen to nothing at all and just listen to myself think. And that is so helpful. It helps me have a better night's sleep. You know, it helps calm my spirit, and it helps put me in a better energy, better mood, better vibe for when I get up the next morning. And so I would say to this person as well, try to find something that can calm your spirit, because there are certain things that we can't control just because of these circumstances and these environments. So try to focus on the things that you know you can. Whatever your environment is, just find that one piece or one slice, even if it's a corner, if it's the closet, if it's the bathroom. Find that place that's just yours and yours alone, like, and make it your sanctuary for even if just one day a week, you know?
Yeah. And, you know, and I like what you said, you know, you can only control what you can, right? And in this case, it sounds like this person's husband is, you know, a bit irritable, and it sounds like she's trying her best and it just is not working out. You know, in that situation, you're not in control of the other person's behavior. And, you know, set limits and say, you know what, you're stressed, I get it, I am too, but I'm not your punching bag, you know? And if you want to treat me that way, maybe it is time for her to go. Like she said that she's thinking about leaving. Sometimes it is, and that's okay too.
You're right.
I mentioned the increase in domestic violence. So, you know, it's happening, it's real. And you can meditate and you can take care of yourself and you can do all the right things for yourself, but in the end you can't control that other person. And if they want to deal with their stress negatively and in a way that hurts you, that is their decision, right?
Because we have situations over here. I know one of the followers just asked, he says, I'm looking for a more definitive answer. I just lost it. I'm looking for a more definitive answer to address volatile home atmospheres. He said that, and then he said, things that can calm your spirit sounds good. But I guess what a lot of people are struggling with is the domestic abuse side of it. And it's hard to really diagnose or give a clear-cut answer without understanding the background of the person. So I think you have to people have to understand you have to tread lightly on giving your suggestions without understanding.
Right. Absolutely. I agree with you. And people, you know, there are domestic abuse hotlines. You can call people anonymously and ask for help if you feel like you can't go to the police. You know, I think you're right. This is a forum to talk about ideas and tips in general, and not necessarily to dive into a case, because that's irresponsible, right? You can't just give advice without knowing the background. You want to be helpful in general. And we talked about seeking help personally, right? Nothing is in the way of getting help on a personal level, right? And that person can get into the nitty-gritty of your situation. And that's what you deserve. You deserve good care.
You're right. So y'all don't be throwing no hot grits on nobody or nothing like that. Please, like Dr. Judith said, make sure you seek professional help. Find out what your options are. There are hotlines. And I know Judith has a very busy schedule, so I'm going to let her go, but I just wanted to read this for a lot of the people listening. We've partnered, the Ministry of Health in the Bahamas has partnered with PAHO and the Public Health Authority and the Bahamas Psychological Association, in collaboration with Ministry of Health, PHA, and PAHO, has repurposed the helplines for COVID-19. Mental health and psychological services will be provided to persons affected by Hurricane Dorian or COVID-19. If you or anyone you know are experiencing persistent and overwhelming emotions like sadness, anxiety, depression, or even domestic abuse, please contact 819, that's area code 242-819-7652. I'm going to post this flyer on my IG story. So if you didn't get that number, there are 3 more numbers that you can reach out to. And you can also follow at NHI Bahamas, which is a company that I work for. And we give information to people that are in need, that struggle with this sort of, with these sorts of issues during this time. But Judith, I want to thank you so much. So much. An hour, we didn't even expect to go an hour. I mean, these lives go like that.
Just remember that, there have been pandemics before, and the majority of people will be okay at the end of it. It doesn't feel like it right now. And we will get through this. So, try to keep that in mind. Okay.
Thank you so much. And if there's anywhere, if somebody wants to reach you to find out how they can possibly sign up to be a patient or get some advice, how can they find you?
It's at drjudithjoseph is my Instagram.
Okay, perfect. So you guys can reach out to Dr. Judith. And thanks again. Kiss your lovely daughter and the family for me. And take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.